actually meeting for the first time after the pandemic. Though we would have expected more people to join in today, but we are happy with whoever could make it. And just in the past 1 month, we've had some very stock market actually finding the first self-appointed billionaire with Miss Falguni, who's actually the owner of Nykaa. And though these are all single people shining, it does not mean what is happening to the Indian women. It still shows that that if you keep going ahead, there is space for people to actually reach the top. And our endeavor with Women's Wing is actually not only to do the CSR activities which the MCHI Women's Wing body was constituted to do, but also to actually challenge ourselves. Like, how do we actually keep growing within ourselves as women? And what are things that actually stop us from accepting ourselves, unconditionally saying what these are our dreams, and how collectively we can also help each other achieve those dreams. That remains one of the core ideas for all these kind of conversations. And to have somebody like Simone coming today is actually, when I was talking to her and I bumped into her incidentally, what was interesting is that you start with baby steps. We kept talking about those baby steps. You start I bumped into somebody who knew Simone and said she used to actually go with her mother for interior projects. Am I right? And from there to actually at that young teenage age, doing projects with your mom, and then going and actually creating a brand and actually owning the brand, and also giving your name to the brand, because that actually says that this is mine. This I own this space. Is very gratifying. I mean, it looks very easy, but it's not very easy, because that means that you're coming out of your private sphere and coming into the public sphere. So I'll start with this whole idea of, I'm just opening questions to Simone, that what was her journey? How did that journey incorporate marriage, which is a very, very important part, becomes an important part for a young woman and a newly wedded girl, and children, because there is this expectation on Indian girls, or maybe women across India or across the world also, that you must be there for your children 24/7. And when you take up public duties, you are not going to be there for your children 24/7. So how do you actually accept the fact that you are not going to be for your children 24/7? And it is okay. It is fine not to be there for them 24/7. It's fine to go and find yourself, doing something outside the house. And so, with these questions, we'll open it to Simone.
First, very good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon. And thank you for being here and making the time to hear me speak. I want to thank Richa and the team for inviting me here. And I'm going to speak about my life, my early years, my marriage, my career, and the journey so far. And of course, a couple of basic principles on which I base my life on, and which has got me so far. And I hope they can come of use to you. So I'm going to share that with you. It will be as brief as I can, because I can speak all day about it. Because it's not been an easy journey. But I have to begin by saying life is what you make of it. And attitude is very important in life. And having an attitude of positivity and willing yourself, having a dream, a vision, and willing yourself to work hard, to make effort, to go there, to get there. And anything and everything is possible. Sky is the limit. What one man can do, another can do. What one woman can do, another can do. So we must keep that at the back of our mind. There is nothing that we can't do. So of course my life began very early. I was, born into a kind of a family where both my parents were well known. My father was an actor, film producer. My mother was an interior designer. And I was exposed to a world where we met well-known people, celebrities, and we met. I was, of course, lived in a beautiful home. And when I mean beautiful, it didn't mean expensive and opulent. It meant that my mother very carefully curated the home. with beautiful objects which she had purchased along her journey. And she made each space very inviting and happy and welcoming to the guests who came in. And the colors were well coordinated. And I could see how she was balancing her life. And that was also a great inspiration to me, being a mother, being a career woman, and a supportive and loving wife with my father. My father was a very imaginative man because he was in film and movie making. So he was obviously creating movie sets and directing a whole lot of people. So I would, as a young kid, observe and learn, and I think that was the initial learning born in this family. I come from a family of three girls and one brother. There was never any gender inequality. My father believed in raising all of us equally. There was not one rule for the boy and the other rule for the girls. Education was a very, very important aspect of our growing up. A lot of emphasis was made on that because my parents believed that education would give us empowerment, and that knowledge is very, very important to move forward in life. And then it's how you make your life after that. So he educated us. And as a young student, at the age of very early in life, 12 actually, I was first elected FOIA monitor of 6 divisions. And there were about 250 students. And that was my first leadership role. And right after that came assistant head pupil the next year at 13. And there were about 1,100 students voting, and I won the assistant head pupil as well. And then it came to head pupil, and I stood again and I won head pupil, so 3 consecutive years. So that's what it taught me, leading a council and leading a school. I came from Jamnabai Nursing School. It taught me balance, which was very important in life. How to be organized, how to be responsible, and how to work towards the different duties that were entrusted upon me. I was a perfectionist, so I wanted everything to be the best that it could be, and I was willing to work for it. So balance was very important, and I couldn't stress more on discipline, being disciplined about time, punctuality, respect people's time, always be early, 10 minutes early rather than 10 minutes late, very important. Be organized. It's like when you organize your mind, your thoughts, it's like organizing your cupboard, your space. And when you organize oneself, I think there's a lot of clarity. There is no clutter. It's like a cupboard or a space that you organize. And like filing your important jobs, your works, making a planning when you move ahead, creating a roadmap in your mind. What do I want to do? What is my goal? What is my aspiration? And then working towards it. Making an effort. When you make an effort in all directions, not just effort towards your work and career, effort towards your health and fitness, which is, COVID has taught us that. It's integral, it's important for mental fitness, mind and body, doing yoga. So health, fitness, your time in terms of how many hours you sleep in a day is very important. Sleep is required. Your diet, what you eat, you are what you eat. When you exercise, there's circulation, which is important. Oxygen is reaching different parts of the body, it enables you to think. So health and fitness is very, very important. So I, from a very young age, started dedicating an hour a day to my health and fitness in the best way that I could. Of course, 5 days a week. So whatever it is, I personally do swimming and yoga. I do a little bit of weights and gym, not too much of that, but whenever you get time. So that was important. And so of course, that was my early years. I was a good student as well. I got a decent grade, I have to say. I was an 85% in my 10th grade. And I didn't go really abroad. I completed my graduation here in India. And that was also great learning for me because despite coming from the home that I came from, we had cars to take us into town. I went to Sophia College. My mother insisted I go by BST bus for 1 year to understand what the local Indian is subjected to, and to appreciate what we had. And that was a big learning to me as well. So I did that for the whole year. And then of course I hitched a ride with a friend of ours who was going to the same school, so they had a car. So we kind of made a carpool and I would be going with them. So these little learnings, while going ahead. And of course, I finished my my school and college, and very early in life I met my husband-to-be. He was my first boyfriend at the age of 16 and a half, and he was 19. He was Ajay Arora, of course, and he was a student as well, and he was studying engineering. And of course, our relationship, we were courting for 6 years. At the age of 21, after graduation, I got married very early. And right after I got married, I began work right after I got back from our honeymoon, from the first day. And from then till now, I've never stopped working. I was on a treadmill of working and learning and growing and evolving. And it's been the most splendid journey of highs and lows, where I've celebrated my triumphs. I've learned from my defeats. All has not been rosy. It's been a challenge. I lived in a joint family for 16 and a half years, from the age of 21 to 35, 36, 38 actually, 38, yes. From 21 to 38, almost 18 years actually, 17, 18 years. And then at the age of 38, I built my own home. We acquired a space in JBPD close to our family home. And I was involved with Hafiz Contractor, the architect, who is also a family friend, but that was a learning itself. Building a home, working alongside him. So it was, I was often jokes about, he asked, he actually invited me, he said, I'm going to give you a job, you'll be my project implementation in charge, because you have executed it so quickly and swiftly. And of course we were working together, I was learning, and that building the home itself was a very, very enjoyable journey for me. And in fact, after in 2000 and I think it was 9, when we moved into our home, and we had friends and relatives and family, of course, enter our home, and they were very amazed to see what kind of products, home decor products, I had brought in, and that was pieces that I picked up globally when I would be doing my shows, international trade shows with Ajay. Which brings me back to the D-Deco part of my life. So I'm going to take you first to the D-Deco part of my life, which was 18 years of D-Deco with Ajay, building the company, which didn't exist in 1996. It was born, that was when my son was born, the company. And we started the home furnishing division.
So this is, sorry to interrupt you, so this is not a family business. You started the decor.
Yes, the family business was apparel fabric, dress materials for ladies and for suitings for men. It was my mother, in fact, who suggested to Ajay that why don't you explore the home furnishing field in India. Those days we had Seasons in Eden. Those were the companies. So that's when we decided. Everyone was more into sarees and dress. So what we did is we decided to go international and go and visit the international trade show in Europe on home furnishing. And that was our first exposure to the home furnishing world. And we felt this is so much that we could do. There was so much of potential here. So we wanted to introduce it to India. We wanted to bring designs, bought machines. Our first trip involved buying 2 second-hand machines. We started with buying these 4 second-hand machines, and we bought artworks from Italian design houses. And we got back to India and we started developing designs and building the factory little by little. And the work entailed numerous visits to the factory. We have a factory in Surat and Tarapur. Of course, we grew that because we started with 1 and today we have many more. And we started doing 1 show and today we do about 6 shows a year, international exhibitions. So my visits to these shows, setting up the stand, we started out with just 3 people setting up a stand, and now we have 25 people from our team who go. So actually going with the bags, setting up our samples, meeting with customers, showing them the offering, speaking to the customers, understanding their requirement, getting back, creating the product, delivering the product. All of this was a learning for me. And it was an enjoyable journey because there was a lot of interaction with design-related people from different walks of life. And that itself was enjoyable to me. And we, of course, started building the business, and then the name slowly came about, D-Decor. It was first DC Mills, then it was DC Tex Furnishings, then it finally became D-Decor, and of course the name stuck. And that's when in about 2010, when I was about 38 or 39, I moved into my home, and I had acquired a lot of these home products through my visits to the shows, which I brought into India and did up my home. So when people, friends who visited, and they said that how nice it would be if we could also have access to these kind of home decor goods in India. And then that got me thinking. I said, how about me starting a small operation of my own, a business enterprise where I could import these goods across the world and showcase them in a curated manner, like I did see in the shows. So that's how the idea came to me. And then we found this heritage space, which was of course a very unique building. And we acquired the floor, and I was doing a lot of things parallelly. I was doing the interiors of the store, which was one, so I had an interior team doing that. I had to meet with my suppliers abroad and discuss the concept and decide which suppliers I needed to source product from to showcase in the store. So we had, in those days we started with 40 suppliers. So I had to actually go and speak to them. Apart from that, I had to work with the marketing team and discuss a campaign as to how I advertise pre-opening. So I actually did an entire shoot in South Africa where I went with a team of Norwegian photographers, and we set up on the beach and at home, and we set up products with lots of pictures, created a brochure for the store. So we did that as well. And then I had to work on the IT system, because we had to naturally incorporate all the products into a system, and we had to interview a lot of our whole team, from the accounts department to the sourcing department. So these were like 4 or 5 different parallel works and jobs that were happening. But here again, delegation. You delegate work to teams who you feel are experts, who specialize, and then you overview and supervise. You can't do everything yourself, because if you try to do everything yourself, you will not be able to grow. So you need to trust that people are, provided you do your research on them, and then entrust them with that responsibility. This in turn empowers them, and they are more accountable and take ownership for what work you give them, rather than hand-holding them and monitoring them in detail, because it takes a lot of your energy. You won't really be able to move quickly. So delegation is very important. This is one of the things I did too. I have a very strong system in my home. I have my staff who are with me even today, who are family members, who looked after my little sons. They're 25 and 26, but I have my domestic staff, a lady who's now she's 75, and she's still with me. And she was there right when the children were just born. So what I meant is that there was a lot of trust, of course, after doing the research that I needed to, and I could be sure that the children would be looked after. Of course, we were in a joint family, so I had my mother-in-law, I had my mother who was 5 minutes away. My siblings, Farah and Suzanne, were not married. I was the first to get married, so they were also happy to keep an eye on my children. But that gave me a lot of time to do other things. My husband was encouraging. He did, motivate me to stretch myself, go the extra mile. So it was not he was curbing me. And I myself believe, like Richa very wisely said, smaller steps. Think big, start small, and build. You don't have to arrive with a bang. You don't need to compete. You only have to compete with yourself. Raise the benchmark on yourself with everything that you do. Believe in yourself. Don't allow anybody else to tell you otherwise. Everybody has a strength of their own. Combine your forces. If you're working in a family, if you're working in an enterprise, combine your energies and your strengths, and together you can do wonders. Because this is what I live my life with. Trust people, don't be too suspicious all the time. Look at the positives, don't look at the negatives. We are all human, nobody's perfect. We are bound to make errors. We all have our challenges, which we don't want to bring to the surface. So understand that if someone is not performing, it could be just a phase. So don't be too harsh on that person. Be sensitive to your people who work for you. Empathy, very, very important.
Very good way you put it out. It's a phase and don't judge somebody because they are not performing.
It's very, very important. Don't be judgmental.
Get to know anybody.
And also it's important in life, not to judge a book by its cover, because you don't know what is inside. So you have to make the best of it. Everything will not go right, but there will be things that will go right, that will give you the fuel, the motivation to push forward, to move forward. Even if you have some kind of a challenge that has really worn you down, a loss in some way, pick up with whatever you have and move forward. Feel good about yourself, have the strength to move on. And family is an important thing. You have good relationship with your family. It's family going to all your strength from your family. Even friends. If you have one good friend, it's better than having 20 social friends. Friends are also important. Work colleagues. Make the workspace a happy space for your colleagues to work in. So they look forward. You spend a good 10 hours in your workspace. So that space, when you get back home, once you feel happy that you were in that workspace, and you were with these people, and your work is your temple, it's your mosque, it's your church, it's whatever you call it. That space is holy, it's respectful. So teach that to your employees. So when they are there, they respect each other. There are no highs and lows. Whether it's the steward who's serving, the housekeeper who's cleaning the shelves, or the salesperson or the accountant. Each one has to be treated with respect. That's very, very important. That should be the culture. So the culture starts from the top. If you're an entrepreneur, you start with that culture. That culture trickles down and everybody follows it. You have to practice what you preach. You have to be your own role model. So these are important things. So once I, of course, decided to start my own enterprise, then naturally it had to be something very unique and very special, and not what everybody has seen in India and in Mumbai. So I put in my maximum efforts to ensure that it was larger than life, if one has to put it that way, where I said it has to be noticed, it has to be appreciated. So the store I selected and the way we curated it, we tried to bring different things from across the world, and now we even have Indian suppliers, not that we only have European suppliers. We want to encourage, Indian talent as well. We have some, wonderful handicrafts. I'm thinking on a new concept which I'm going to be introducing in the next couple of months, where we will be getting artisans and handicraft experts, where we're going to be creating corners on India. We will be doing that too. So I wanted to do something that made it special, that would stand out, which would be unique, which would be noticed. And I went into long hours of work, into attention to detail, in driving the team, in motivating them to work with me. They knew I would never settle for anything less other than perfect. So drive them to perform. Perform yourself, but drive them to perform. So basically, it's, life is about effort. Effort in all directions, like we said. Discipline, which is key. And as you go along, things start moving, and that itself, once you taste success, then it, fuels the desire to push yourself more. And sometimes you don't. A lot of well-deserving people don't get success too early. But one should not feel let down. One should drive yourself further and further. So I just have a couple of things which I don't want to miss out on. So I'm not going to read it, but just kind of.
I know you are going to read them, but
Yes,
I'm
yes.
just going to.
I'm not going to read
Yeah,
it. These
no,
are
no.
just points which
No.
I'm going to be speaking
So,
about.
Shraddha and me were talking last night, and we spoke about, we're talking about, this is a safe space for dialogue. So we're
Yes,
looking at
yes.
how we can actually things which maybe inhibit us in some ways, how do we actually accept them and then work with them, right? So something which, when I was very young, when I just came out of college, and you realize that there is ambition.
Yes.
And ambition is, can be a double-edged word. Ambition can be looked as positively because oh, she's ambitious or he's ambitious, so there is this, there is this attachment to achieving something. And in some cases, in some scenarios, when you start wanting to achieve, obviously you're, let's say in a family setting, and you're more ambitious than, let's say, your siblings or with your peer group. Ambition can also be taken as a very wrong word. She's very ambitious, don't talk to her, she's like, she's too hot-headed. All these, and especially there is a gender connotation to it also, because ambitious women are strong women, right? Ambitious women are strong individuals. Women is because you are born a woman. It has nothing to do with the emotion that you feel. It's the gender physicalities that you have. And every time, women have to deal with suppressing of ambitions if you want to be accepted in a certain social, I would say, framework. So, we have 2 generations at least out here, or maybe 3, and how would you look at young girls accepting ambition for themselves, not only as at the junction which they are, but also finding a roadmap for themselves. Because today, if I was to talk to my daughter, I would definitely tell her that you must have a 50-year roadmap for yourself, because life you're going to be living till 70, 75, and how would you see yourself growing over those 40, 50 years? Because children are going to be a part of those 40, 50 years. Maybe you don't have children. Today, a lot of women don't want to have children. Many families don't want to have children. So, how do you look at, and I'll open it with Shraddha, because she can actually then add on to that. How do you look at ambition? How do you, because she studied also, she studied at Columbia University. She's actually done an undergrad from the US, and she's working full-time as a real estate, in the real estate profession. So how do you look at ambition? And then we'll have someone asking about ambition.
I say ambition, there are different types of ambitions. Ambition doesn't have to be like large volume businesses or scale turnover. It can be as simple as even getting creative from home and finding a purpose in life. So I would say ambition is finding a goal, a purpose, and working towards it consistently. Not just working towards it for 1-2 years and okay, you know what, now I'm done, now I don't want to do it. So ambition can mean there are different kinds of ambitions, and it could mean anything as well as even becoming a makeup artist, but doing your best in it, or even like the lady at my hair salon, I just feel like she puts in she really puts in so much effort, and she's so positive on how she treats her clients and works for them, that I find her so ambitious, even though she comes only 3-4 hours a day to work, but she does it with so much thought and genuinity that I feel I find her very ambitious too as a human being.
So Shraddha, if you were to accept ambition for yourself, how would you define that?
Okay, so for myself, I would say personally I'm a very ambitious girl, and I've always been brought up in a family where we play a lot of big games, real estate, we do big volumes, big projects, and my dad has always had that kind of an ambition. So my level of ambition is very different, where I wake up really early by 6:30, and I'm the first to sleep also. I sleep by 10:30, 11 at night, I wake up, I work out, and then I'm just out of the house by 8:39, be it Fort or Thane or wherever. I have to go to the bankers, I have to go to the consultant's place, and I'm continuously on such a roll and go that I don't even check social media so much during the day. My lunch hours are also just 10-15 minutes of lunch, where it's just me and my brother reflecting on things and talking about our lunch, just talking about work. And post that, I leave the house, I leave the office by 7 or sometimes 6:30. It depends on our timings and depends where I am also. Because so many times there was a time where I used to do Pune once a week because we had a project going on. So those days I used to wake up at 5 and by 5:36 I would be out of the house because I had to be in Pune by 9. But there are different phases of ambition too. Probably 4-5 years ago I was much more in an ambitious stage of life. At this stage I'm pretty content with what I've achieved to where I wanted the company to go forward. And now there's much more, but now I'm focusing more on my personal life along with my work ambitions. There are different types, probably after getting married I'll have a different stage of ambition, after getting kids I'll be ambitious in a different way. So that's how this goes very differently.
So Simone, coming back to us, how would you say that women can adopt ambition, accept ambition? It's not easy because if let's say you are doing well, I mean maybe you're not ambitious, you're doing really well, there is a different way when other people look at you. And that it's the dialogue that you have with yourself and how others perceive you. That sometimes asks you to maybe, what is your experience being with this dialogue?
Well, let me say this. First, we as women must feel very privileged to be born a woman. We must enjoy our femininity. We must enjoy being a woman. Now, being a woman, it involves multiple roles and multiple hats. You've got to multitask. And how you manage to multitask will define you. So each one should make their own ambition and decide how much you want to drive yourself, what effort you want to put in. You are capable of a lot more than you think. That's the first thing one should understand. And must believe that. And then push yourself. Not because others are doing it, not because your sibling or your friend or socially this is what's expected from you. This is for yourself. It's not for anybody else. In doing so, you are also becoming a role model for your children because they will follow what you are rather than teaching them one thing and doing something else. So enjoy your femininity. If you want to be a mother, there is too much of fulfillment in being a mother, but it's your choice. There are others who don't wish to be a mother. They have other priorities in life. That is fine too. Each to their own. One should not judge. So the first important thing is to manage your role, whether it's being a wife, being a supportive and loving wife, being a caring mother, a mother who is there for her children 24/7, whenever he or she needs them. It doesn't have to be quantity of time, it can be even quality of time. In my growing years, I have 3 children. Now this would be quite amazing to all of you. I never watched a movie with any of my children because I didn't feel I could bond with them watching a movie. I never really slept with them in the room after they fell asleep. I ensured I was there before they slept, or I could spend their waking hours with them, where I guided them, I motivated them, I cuddled with them, I spent all the physical time that I could with them. But it was not necessary for me to hang around them while they were doing other activities, because that time I utilized doing other things. So time management is key, and your ambition, whichever ambition you have for yourself, like Shraddha very well put it, it's not about the scale of ambition. Whatever you decide to do it really well. Be the best at it. If you see an enthusiastic, flight attendant or a waiter or even a sweeper who takes pride in his work and he's making sure that his job is well done, that is all that's needed. So decide for yourself what is your ambition for yourself, not for others. Do it well and feel good about it. If something is not working, change. Like Richa correctly said, that roadmap is very important. You must have a vision and a dream, because without that you are rudderless. You don't know where you're going. You won't even feel a sense of accomplishment. Once you accomplish something, for me, every goal of mine after I accomplished it, it was my reward. Not that others praised it or others, of course, if people appreciated it, I was humbled. It was something which was a good learning for me that I felt good about. But I wasn't doing it for others. I was doing it for myself. That itself gave me, now what is my next challenge? Let me push myself further. And that's where I did task after task. And each task must have a timeline. You can't go on doing the same thing if you're taking up a project endlessly, because then you don't have a plan. There has to be a plan that I need to finish this in these months or in this year, this is my task. And you need to work towards that. So whether you need to get a team to assist you, whether you need to take counsel, whether you need to read up on it. Now here I can't stress less on the emphasis of reading. Reading books are your windows to the world. Whatever it is you like, whatever it is you could enjoy cooking, learning about cooking, about travel, about real estate, about industry, whatever it is that is of interest to you, read. Not only will it improve your communicative skills, how how you speak, because how you speak defines you. It's your first impression, it's not just your physicality, it's how you speak. You will increase your vocabulary, you look up words that you don't know. We're all learning, we're all improving. We will continue to learn at the age of 90. So learning never stops. So reading is a must. Whatever, you could be reading magazines, but what you read is also important in terms of what kind of media you're reading. Even movies. For myself, I have to say, I love watching movies. But ask me what are the kind of movies you watch. I watch movies that are entertaining, yes, because at the end of the day, movies need to entertain, but meaningful ones. Where I feel I can learn even through characters. Because I can never be that character, nor can I ever be in that place. But a good movie that is well made, with good performing artists, teaches you how this person has reacted in that situation, what is he expected to be doing, how is he handling a situation, and these are all learnings in life. It even stretches your imagination, because you see you're transported into a world of, maybe you never visit that place, but through the movie you're visually learning. So you can even read, and even through reading descriptive books, you can also visualize. So there are two ways of learning. Movies, and so for me again, movies, good books have contributed tremendously. This I must add here, into my learning and my journey. And ambition, coming back to the word which we started from, everybody must have some kind of ambition for yourself. You want to be a good mother? Great. Be the best mother that you can. Be a good wife, be a good daughter-in-law, the best friend, fulfill your responsibilities as a friend. But there is more to than doing just fulfilling your home and your earth. Because life is about creating impact, your contributions to community. What is it you're giving back? We are born into this world not to just live for ourselves, not to achieve, to earn accolades, to be happy with our accomplishments, with our monetary earnings, with praise. That is ordinary. A lot of people do that. What is extraordinary? Work that you have done for others, which may go unnoticed, which may not be seen or ever known or written about, but that sense of fulfillment will create an aura around you. It will create a feeling, a glow around you, that you're doing good things. It will give you a sense of empowerment and strength and truth and righteousness, because you are reaching out to those who can't be spoken, who can't speak, who don't have platforms where they can be heard. You're making some kind of a difference. So whatever you do, ensure that you do some kind of charity, some kind of giving back. What is the best form of prayer to me is not visiting a holy place or going on a pilgrimage or donating to a shrine. To me, charity is prayer. God is happier if you put a smile on someone's face, a needy person, or help them, rather than keep a fast or make donations or go to pilgrimages. You can do that too. It brings you a sense of peace. Do that, because religion and prayer is a personal thing. It's what makes you feel good, and sometimes, in many cases, it brings a lot of power within you, and that power helps you do many great things. So if it is important for you to do that, go on that pilgrimage, do it. But it's after you indulge in that activity, what is it you take out from there? That power, that peace, that rejuvenation that is brought you, how am I going to bring back and impact others? So these are very important things to think about. The younger generation, we are young too, we're not old, so I'm not going to say, but I'm just saying the younger generation. And we as women, we have an important responsibility and a task ahead of us, is to teach the youngers, whether it's the children, whether it's people around us. Because not only do we do, but we teach. The world changes and improves this way. It's not all about ourselves. This is the key thing. The most important thing in your life, the most important thing of living life, is not just living for yourself. It's about giving back, being happy with people around you happy too.
So, Simone, you spoke about religion, and that was actually my next, something that we wanted to discuss also today. Because we are not only person, we are also public. We are both. And Simone is obviously comes from a family where you're Muslim married to a Hindu family, and
Call myself a humanitarian.
yeah, and so,
Always.
right. We're all. I hope that we're all.
For me, that's my religion.
Yeah, and increasingly, we find what is the dominant narrative in our country, and it is not. To me, at least, I'm not very happy with where we are today, because we have the sense of other. I mean, when I was growing up, I didn't have a sense of other, at least not overtly. Maybe certain families had a sense of other, but not overtly. And today, these are important topics to talk, because there are these senses of others which are created, and it impacts you, because there are ways which where you have a sense of other, whether you're living in if you live in a building, you want. If you live in JVPD, I know that there are places where you only want Jains to be living, or you're living in a society somewhere else. You don't want people from other communities or other religions to be living. And what is our role as women? First as citizens, first of all as humans, in understanding how does it impact us. To me, it impacts on a very personal level. Like, I can't look at somebody and say, oh, this person is Buddhist, or this person is a Sikh, or this person is a Muslim, or this person is a Christian. It just, I don't know how does that come about. And obviously then there is this whole idea that, there's a narrative that says we can't have inter-caste, inter-religious, inter-state, inter-country marriages, right? But certain marriages are public marriages. They actually allow people to say, oh, they've had a very good marriage, why can't we have that marriage? So how do we as humans, as individuals, challenge something which is supposed to be personal? I'm born into the religion that I'm born into. I don't have a choice. I can't change my religion, right? I'm born into a Hindu family, I become a Hindu. I'm born into a Christian family, I become a Christian. And you said that, you said a very interesting word. You said indulgent. Religious trips, or when you go for a pilgrimage, it's an indulgence that you are doing. It's not who you are. It's your path of finding yourself. And how do you come back and say, okay, this is where I want to go now? Like, charity or living for somebody beyond you is where you want to go now. And I'll open this to you, because you are on both parts of this India, and you are personally where you come from, where you are married, and what you've seen over the past 20-25 years. How would you actually talk to somebody and say, how does it impact you? What you get? What are you agitated about, and what would you like to see next?
Well, Richa, I appreciate you bringing up this point, because this is the unfortunate reality which is not just in front of us in India but worldwide. And the first and most important thing is for all of us to first think, are we truly educated? Educated is not just about getting a degree or getting A's in class. It's about your mindset. If we are truly educated, and if we've all done a certain degree of biology, we all know we are human beings, and we all have the same organs, the same blood in our veins. There are only two genders, man and woman.
Many genders.
Many genders, fair enough. But what I'm saying is,
I know, because we have to be
generally, yes, you're right. But we are all created humans. We are the human race, and we're all created. And there is a purpose in life. And what is each one's purpose in life? Is to do good, to think good, to be a good human being. Isn't this what religion actually teaches us at the core? Every religion. There are different languages, there are different books written by scholars, by saints, by holy men over the years, which we worship. The books, the writings, all the writings mean the same thing. In different languages, they all mean being a good human being, doing good, thinking good, and living good. And when you talk about good, what is your inner calling? What is your conscience? The inner voice to me is God. Your conscience is God. When they say God lives within you, that's your conscience speaking. When you know you're doing something that is not right, you know you're not doing it, it's not right, but you still sometimes do it because you're tempted. or it's a weak moment and you know it's not right. It's guilt. That is God telling you, don't go there. But you still choose to do it for whatever reason. So is your inner voice telling you to create these barriers, to differentiate between people? Because majority of people, maybe in your community or in your city, is believing that way. Are you going to follow the flock of the majority, or are you going to have your own inner voice tell you what is the right thing? Will I feel good if I do this, or will I feel good when I do that? I was born in a family extremely secular. My father never taught us any differentiation, and we were exposed to all kinds of races, religions. They were all our near and dear ones, from our staff to our teachers, our tuition teachers, to our friends, my best friends. I got married to a Hindu. I didn't even think that he's a Hindu or a Punjabi. I have my children today who have the Arora surname and the Khan surname. I don't even think Khan or Arora, it doesn't matter to me. When my children were just admitted to school, the school diary came back to me with religion. And I wrote down humanity and I sent it back. And then my son came back to me and said, Mom, my teacher said that you can't write humanity. I said, I won't change it, tell her to speak to me. Of course, she never spoke to me, but I never changed it. Because for me, humanity is the greatest religion. And that is what my God and my inner voice tells me. And your rituals, by all means, they are different ways of worship, and by all means, do the rituals that you need to. Don't go excessively into rituals. Go into deeds, because deeds is actual religion. But whatever brings peace to you at the end of the day. Now there are people around, unfortunately, not just in our city or in our country or in this world, but it's all over that way, where religion is used as a tool for power. And there are people who are not truly educated, who get trapped or who get molded or influenced by this thought that by believing that a religion is superior to the other religion, I can exercise force and power. Being a bully, we were taught as young children growing in school. If you watch a bully being hard on a weak person, is not a good sign to watch. That bully could be in a position of authority. He or she could be more wealthy. He or she could be more physically blessed. And you have a weaker person who doesn't have a choice. He or she is having to bear the brunt of the bully. Are you going to be shutting your eyes to watching a bully doing his injustice? Is that what we as human beings were born to do? Or are we going to take a stand? So when you see a collective force, a mass of people, and unfortunately that mass is the majority, but they are the big bullies, because they are probably enforcing a lot of do's and don'ts on the minority maybe, or on the weaker section of society. Are we going to join the bullies or the force, which is the larger force, where we believe that by being there, we are protected and our home and earth is safe? And we are really not bothered about the minorities, because the minorities don't matter to us, or the weaker people don't matter to us. Is that what we were born to do? Is that what your inner calling is telling you? So that we are in a safe place, our families are safe, our businesses are safe, nothing can touch us. So let's jump onto the rising star, and let's not be there for those who don't have a platform, who don't have a voice. This is a question each one needs to ask themselves. And if you choose to be whichever way, that's again your choice. It's your choice to make. Nobody will judge you for it. You will know which way you have gone. You will have to live with that. If you can live with that conscience, that you are believing or being influenced to go a certain way, when universal brotherhood, universal equality are the ways to live life today, where sharing, kindness, sensitivity, empathy, goodness, these are the words one should speak about and live life. It's not just about building big businesses. It's not about being on the top or being the most famous or the wealthiest man or woman in this country or this world. It's about the legacy you leave behind, the goodwill that this was a man or a woman who did something back, or his father or his mother, your children will speak that way of you. And I strongly believe that the way we live life, there is karma. I believe in karma because there is a soul, and the soul is reborn, if people believe it or not, in a different body, in a different time. And it's not necessary about rebirth or in the next life. It could even be in your living life, karma could get to you. Because how you live your life, you know, and it comes back. If it doesn't come directly back at you, it will definitely come back either to your children or to the people that you love most. But it's God's way of teaching you that you deserve to get back. Life is a circle. So do the right thing. I would always encourage everybody to do the right thing. Listen to God who resides within you.
Even when you're not sleeping, do the right thing even when nobody's looking.
This is it. Nobody needs to see what you're doing. Nobody needs to give you a medal for it. Nobody needs to write about you. It's about when no one is looking and you're doing the right thing, it gives you a sense of power. And that power is so strong that you're not going to be disrespected or talked down to or listen to nonsense from anybody. Because you are so righteous from within. At least you try to be. Nobody's 100%. But at least you try to be. That you're not going to listen to anybody talk you down. Because you've lived your life in this clean way, or trying to live the life, trying to be an idealist. It's not easy and it's not possible. We all are error prone. We are all humans. But we work in a direction that is of goodness. Goodness is a very important word. Listening to your inner calling, which you call the conscience.
Simone, you've actually put it very, I would say, philosophically, without, to a large extent, without actually saying overtly what can be said, maybe should be said also. I will take one step further. I'll take one.
We live in a democratic country.
No,
we all have the right to speak.
Yeah.
It's our fundamental right.
So the whole idea of having these conversations is that are we actually being true to ourselves, to the goodness inside us, and then also understanding that are we being at some places not true to ourselves. By as in your way, you could say it could be listening to a dominant narrative or a dominant person in our societies. Because this could be personal, this could be public
And
also.
sometimes it could be also someone you really
Care about. You somebody
and
respect
he or she
Yeah.
is speaking in a certain way. So you feel
I must
rather
listen.
go along
Yeah.
rather than say, hey, listen, pause right here.
Yeah.
I want you to rethink.
It's the dining way. It's the dining table conversations which are the most difficult, because that's where you're most vulnerable, right? I mean, we all know, we are all women. When you're sitting on a dining table
Yeah.
and you have somebody, obviously it's going to be your brother, brother-in-law, father, father-in-law, sister, sister-in-law. These are relationships which are the most precious to us. They are the ones that give you the most security in your life, and it's challenging. Not even challenging. It's having a dialogue. I mean, there's no point challenging anyone, because it's finally your own journey. Where do you finally reach in having that conversation? Because so many times you realize, oh, I was at fault here. I did not understand the intention or it's always you realizing yourself.
But don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah, I think
What
that's
we're trying to say here
Yeah.
is don't be intimidated by a force that is either a masculine force or a more dominant force, whether it's a senior force or any kind of position of authority, because it's your truth within you which will give you power. So it's not your age or your gender or your accomplishment that will give you power. It's your truth that will give you power. Believe in that.
I think a lot of women, which I even put myself in, be it work or be it relationships, a lot of us are very afraid to speak up in front of authority, that if we've committed to something, how can we back out when I'm still being treated badly? Or if I'm working, they're treating me so terribly day and night, that what they're doing is wrong, but I know that this is not good, this is like the right thing. But we're just so scared because we just want to be a part of the sheep. But they say don't be a part of the sheep.
Don't go to the flock.
And you may lose out also. Being a girl, you may lose out also because everyone will point fingers out at you. You must have that inner calling, that truth within you, which is so strong that you have to stand by yourself, being undefeated, in line with the law of the universe, saying that, what.
that will give you a lot of confidence and strength.
Even though
Because people
everyone
will
will be
respect
trained.
you. You see, if you go with the flow, if you believe in the flow, by all means go with the flow. It's not that majority is wrong, that majority is right. So go with where you believe in, but have the confidence to speak up. Don't be, don't be shy to say what you have to say, and don't get intimidated by any force. It's not what you say; it's also sometimes how you say it. You don't have to shout, you don't have to scream, you don't have to rant, because all of that takes a lot of energy, brings a lot of bad blood and negativity around. You don't need to say that. So you need to speak correctly in terms of what you speak, how you speak, which is why reading at any stage in your life, it's not too late. Reading will enable that communication, that to flow naturally, will help you choose the right words, to express your emotions, your thoughts correctly. It will define you and you will get a lot of respect.
Yesterday I was talking to Shraddha and I said, Shraddha, what are the changes would you like to see in the real estate industry? And she said, I would like to see more women buyers. Women buying properties in their name. And I didn't know that, but thank you, Shraddha, for telling me that there's a 1% stamp duty
Yes.
deduction.
They want to promote
They want to
women
promote,
buyers.
The concession
and
didn't go forward as much as we wished it would have
Yeah.
at that time.
but it's always like that, Shraddha. Sometimes the law goes forward than the society. Sometimes the society goes forward than the law. So let's say Inheritance Act 2005, it's the law that goes ahead of the society. Whereas when you see the gender, when you have the Article 370, it's the people who went ahead of the Article 370. So it's a continuous dialogue between law, society, human beings. What is pushing what? It's a continuous cycle. That's how the wheels of the bus go forward, hopefully.
No, sometimes what happens in this case, women are not working, so they don't have the income. They get the loan.
Yeah.
That is also one of the reasons.
Reason of not getting this
otherwise-
1%.
Yeah. So here we are just actually.
This is where it's important, self-sufficiency.
Self-sufficiency.
You
Yes.
see, we are all blessed to be educated. At least most of us are. Now, what is it you do with the education? One is you do something with it. It's not about creating the biggest business empire. Whatever it is you're passionate about, whatever it is which you enjoy doing, like we discussed earlier. You like it, you do it well, be the best at it, but do something which is constructive, which is creative, something which which you're proud of, and by doing so you can generate some income. Again, it's not about how much income, but that again gives you a sense of self-worth and purpose. So when you create, even if it's a small portfolio, it doesn't have to be a large one, depending on how much effort you're willing to put in, what decisions you make at the important crossroads in your life. Because all of this, what support system you have, a lot of people, you feel they are riding high, but you fail to see they have a lot of support system around them. They're not doing it alone. There are certain who are on their own and they're working really hard, but somehow they are just not getting the success they truly deserve. So basically, it comes back to again success is another thing which I wanted to say. How do you define success? Success has several components. Success is not just monetary acquisition. It's not about living in a large home, having fancy cars, wearing fancy clothing, jewelry. That's not success. That's one component of success. Success can also be health. If you have the wealth of good health, that's success. Relationships. If you invest in good relationships and you can depend on people when you need them, when you reach out to them. Family, having good family values, having bonds, family bonds, that's again success. So success has many components. It's all about how you view it, and that is, at the end of the day, that it's finally everybody, what is everybody pursuing here? Everybody's pursuing happiness in some way or the other. We are all in the pursuit of happiness. What is happiness is, to some, happiness is in some way, some people believe happiness is another way. Some people want to work hard and create empire, and that's happiness. Some people want to have a beautiful family, and that's happiness. So some people want to do charity work and create some impact, that's happiness. So find your happiness, work towards it, but don't be fooled into believing that the lady or the man who is probably written about or who has all the acquisition, monetary acquisition, or is the most successful person. Yes, don't underestimate that person either, because even to get there was hard work. So that person has to be respected to some extent. Now, how he or she got there, the journey is a different question altogether. There are lots of ways of getting where you need to be. So the means is more important than the end. It's not just the goal. It's not finally I got there and I did whatever I had to do, but I got there. So make sure that how you get there is important. The means, the journey, your values, your deeds, your thoughts, your decisions, all of that will define who you are. And you know what? Nobody else will know it. Maybe some people will know it, some of it or not, but you will know it. And you are the most important person here, the I. Remember that. It's not for others. Impression is something which, brings a lot of people down in life. They live life for impressing upon others. Don't make the others so important that you've got to lead your life based on what he or she thinks of you. You know who you are. You don't need others to tell you who you are.
So Simone, maybe we just have some, not questions, I would say some reflections. We can start with, it would be nice just to have something that if everybody wants to open a dialogue.
Yes.
Shraddha, would you like to?
I think we've covered most times.
Sneha, would you like to have your own reflections, your own journey?
So I actually really wanted to, wanted to talk about your entire experience while building your career. If you could just share some light on that, while the actual journey of your career.
The actual journey or, okay. So
Basically making your own brand.
creating the Simone brand or the
Yes.
Deco brand?
The D-Decor and Simone, both if you could shed some light, that would be great.
Okay.
Shraddha, here Sneha is asking, she wants to know how did you do it?
So I think as young girls we're really
If I have to,
interested.
I'm going to try to keep it as brief as
Yes.
possible. So, and each word that I say, I can't emphasize enough on it. So, the most important for me, hard work, perseverance, persistence, never letting go, discipline, ensuring that you do everything that needs to be done in a disciplined way, time management to ensure you allocate your time wisely so you get a lot done in a little time, organizational skills, organizing, like you say, your space, like you organize your cupboard, your space, your work, delegating. You can't be everywhere and do everything yourself. You need to delegate. Punctuality, important. Respect people's time, be punctual, don't be late. It frays you when you enter a space and you're late. You're grappling with so many things. You need to reach 10 minutes earlier, organize yourself, study the surroundings, compile your thoughts, and then you're ready to go, whichever way you need to go.
I think Sneha is more, she's actually
How did I
asking
get to-
how this is like the value system, this is the core,
Right.
let's say, and I think maybe she's just wanting to know that if she wants to build a brand today that becomes, let's say, maybe getting Shahrukh and Gauri, the advertising spending,
Okay.
So
am I right?
Yeah.
Sneha?
So basically, I'm personally struggling to make two brands, and because of lockdown, it obviously got a little delayed and everything. I'm also working with my dad in Cello.
Right.
So again, we're into completely different. We're into thermoware, and my dad started a new pen project right now, which we already were into, but now planning two spaces on my personal side. But to manage, and also we are from a very big joint family, so to manage all of that
Okay.
and
Now I get what you're
your
asking.
work,
Okay.
like the entire priority, and actually like spend and giving the right time to each project, because it's not just about doing it right, it's about doing it right.
Totally.
And with the same kind of
Totally.
passion.
Totally. Yeah. So the most important thing here is to first decide what you want to do. Okay, so you have your vision, you have your goal, this is what I want to do. Then you create a business plan. Once you create a business plan, you naturally perfect it. So you go through it multiple times. You make sure that you have everything that you want in your business plan there.
So
You need a team.
Sorry, I'll just interrupt you. Do you make the business plan yourself, or did you have help from others when you were
The
making
initial
it?
draft of the thought has to come from you.
Yeah.
Because you know, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I want to do, this is my ambition. So I create a business plan. Then I tweak it and improvise it. Then I decide on a team. The team I decide, I delegate responsibilities to, and finally they will be probably a part of that business venture. So I will bring them in, they will understand the business plan. They
And
will
your business
then-
plan will also have financials in it, right?
Definitely.
Right.
It has to have financial. So it has to have, your business plan has to do with what you want to do, where you want to do it, what is your target audience, what is your price points. So you've got to put a lot of criteria. You've got to create a whole, like a docket. Okay. And then you sit with the people that you want on board. Somebody maybe who you respect, who you want to run your business plan through, and have this person hear you out. And you can always then fill in things that are missing and improvise. So your business plan over a period of time, it's like a movie script. Before you start shooting, you create the perfect script, more or less. When I say perfect, more or less, because the last thing you want to do is go on site or on shoot and then make changes, which will result in delays and a lot of unnecessary cost. So you don't want that. So everything has to be scripted very carefully, and then there has to be a timeline. You can't say this is an endless business plan. So the timeline has to, this has to be the target opening date. So I need to start here and I need to finish, because otherwise it will just keep going and that will result in losses. And then of course you get your competent team in place. And be very ready to work, be very passionate about what you want to do. See, passion is a very, very important word. Because if you're passionate about what you want to do, work will never be work. It will be fun. When I start my work, when I'm doing my work, Sunday comes in the middle of the week where I have to go back and be with my family. Of course, I love my family, I love my children, but I can be working on Sunday if I have to. But I'm the kind of person, I can't hang around this space. If I have finished my job in that space, whether it is my job in the store, for example, involves picking the products. When I go to these trade shows abroad, there are 5,000 exhibitors. I visit the exhibitors that are of use to me. I decide on what I want to purchase. Then of course I hand over those invoices to my team, then speak with the company and get those goods in through the customs clearance, etc. Once the goods reach here, we decide how we want to curate the store, how we want to place it, how we want to price it, right? Then we decide on the marketing initiatives, how we want to market, what is the target audience, all those initiatives we need to work on. So marketing is also important. How we want to package it. So that whole thing is another story, the packaging, the stationery, all of that. Creating the experience. So for me, it was the store. So when I'm talking about the Simone store, it was creating the total experience for the customer. It's about the product he sees, how he sees value in it, whether how it's attractive, how good it looks, how functional it is, what is the value, what is the durability of it. So all these things will create value. Is it worth buying for this price? And then what is my experience, my service when I enter? How am I being serviced? So I have to ensure that my service team, which is my sales team, they are knowledgeable about the product that they're planning to sell. Because without the knowledge, they can't have half knowledge or less. Then it will be looked upon as an incompetent organization. So they have to be naturally, since they are facing the consumer, they've got to be well groomed. They've got to speak correctly, they've got to have knowledge about the product. The product itself must have all the details, the description, the prices, etc. Then of course we launch a lot of marketing initiatives where we have certain festive times, certain discount schemes, vouchers. So all those things keep happening. Social media, shoots, advertising. When we started out Simone, the first 4 years we were just being written about in every possible magazine, where the shoots were happening on covers or features inside. All that helps because people read, they know about your store. You're in Bombay, somebody in Bhavnagar will read about you. So what I'm saying is it's about, you need to reach out there. So you need the medium. It's very, very important to have that medium. So basically making a plan is very important, and then executing it is equally important, and then seeing how well you execute it, not just finish it, making sure that you left no stone unturned in the right cost. That's another fourth thing, because the cost can't just skyrocket.
Yeah.
Because if it's just endless, then it's not a viable business. So at the end of the day, business is about making money. It's not a romance or an adventure. It's about
I mean, how many years can you break even, right?
Exactly. So you've got to make sure that whatever you're putting in, you get back, and that how you need to sustain the business. So that is also, this as far as the Simone store is concerned. Now this is one store, of course, one of its kind in India, which of course I'm proud to say a lot of effort went into it. But when I talk about D-Deco, the model was totally different. That was a model with scale. So there you have, we are the largest in the world manufacturers. We make 21 lakh meters of fabric a month. We sell to 70 countries. 30% of our produce is sold within India. We're across all categories, whether it's bed and bath, whether it's home furnishings, fabrics, all different types of materials. We do velvets, jacquards, embroideries, linens, blends, etc., etc. So, of course, we didn't start with all of this versatility. We started small, like I said, but we thought big. The idea was to be big, but think small, start small, and then build. And then the team also started growing. So of course, we were ready to work, we were ready to put in the hours. The first 15 years of my life, I worked 18 hours a day. I never socialized, I never went out for parties. From the age of 21 to 33, 34, I was totally a workaholic. I built my life in those 15 years. And every time I kept saying that, because I had dreams, and I was married into a joint family like you, and my in-laws were very, very good to me when, of course, when we got married. Naturally, they wanted to give me the best, but their thinking was not, they didn't have ambition. I had ambition, my husband had ambition. So they were happy, they believed that we would continue to live in that joint family, in that room, with maybe one more room where our children would stay for the rest of our life. And that was their thinking at that time, because they didn't imagine that we would do what we would end up doing. But from day one, they saw that here is not just our son, our daughter-in-law both willing to go out there, not just locally but internationally, and make a presence internationally for the company. And she's ready to work for it. So when they saw that drive, that when they saw that initiative, because initiative is very important. Warren Buffett, when he interviews people for his organization, he looks for the 3 I's, and the first was, of course, intelligence, and he looks for initiative, and he then looks for integrity. These are the 3 I's he looks for. And for me, the most important is integrity, and the same was for him. So when you see, integrity is your moral compass. It's what we were talking about earlier about secularism and all of that. It's your inner calling. It's doing the right thing. So when I was out there pursuing my dreams, I believe there were so many challenges that came my way. Every time there was a spoke in the wheel, why it can't be done rather than it can be done. First was attitude. I started my talk today with saying life is what you make of it. Attitude is very important. So you can be succumbed, you can be deterred, you can be influenced or even railroaded by forces around you, people you love, you care about, who may say or make you do things that you don't believe is right. Speak up, gently, softly. It will have impact. Repetitively if you have to. Don't be bullied. Do your thing. Believe in yourself. And to do all of this that I'm telling you to do, keep yourself healthy. If you're not healthy, physically and mentally, you can't achieve all of this. When I have long hours at my store, I will still go back and I will work out even if it's at 10 o'clock at night. I will do it because I know that I've completed my day and I sleep like a rock. So it's like 7 to 8 hours of, I must be having 1,000 dreams. I don't know. I'm like a rock because I'm so tired by the end of the day. My mind is working all the time. So if you keep yourself occupied constructively, your mind, and I'm never thinking about any second person, what they are doing in terms of how they are following or chasing their ambitions.
Simone, I'll just interrupt here. One thing which reminds all of us is financials.
Yes.
Right? How when you're making a business plan, it's not necessarily everything is going to be successful.
Yes.
Right? Did you have in mind that this is what I'm going to spend between you and your husband? I mean, in the sense, how did you decide that? And you said you started the company on your own. So did you have money of your own? Did you take borrowings? And how did you financially think about your journey?
We started, like I said, very small. There was nothing of what we see today, to be honest. But we believed, both Ajay and me, brick by brick, you can create anything and everything. As long as what you're doing is not illegal or disrespectful, do what you're doing. So when we started out, of course, we had, the family was in textiles. So we had connections in the textile industry, not home furnishings, but connections within the within the textile industry. So when we started out, we started with 4 second-hand looms, textile looms. So we had to take loans when we wanted to buy more and build. So we took an initial loan, which we had to pay off. And through our work, when the company started doing well and generating money, my husband believed in till today does, he believes in Excels, where he creates a financial plan where we write all our expenses, our operational expenses, what we are, our loans, what we put in, and it's kind of a math, it's a calculation, what we are expected to earn, worst case scenario, best case scenario. So the financial plan is very, very important. So in your business plan, that's a part of your business plan. And then slowly and steadily, you start taking bigger and bigger bites. You don't take the big bite right from the beginning, you get indigestion. So you start growing. And then as you go along, now my journey is a journey of, it's 26 years I started. From 26 years, we embarked on a journey where I went to buy a home in JVP. And we bought the home and we had 1/10 of the money with us. And we did the deal. And how are we going to pay these people? So my husband actually had to take a loan where he had to pay back. And we structured a way of paying the owner of the plot over a period of time. And that's how we bought it. So similarly in the business, it was a bank. And we did the same. And then, of course, we were ready to work and put in the hours, and I guess God is with everybody, God is with the hardworking, the bold and the brave and the hardworking. And I think that's how luck came our way. And we built, and today, I'm proud to say that as a woman, I have a substantial, portfolio, it's in my name, it's not, it's not like it's in Ajay's name, it's in my name, my enterprise is completely in my name. We have built, we bought it through work. It was not, I was not an heiress. My in-laws or my parents didn't give us any wealth. They gave us an education and they gave us values. And we started with no wealth. We contributed even when we got married, my husband and my family, my husband's family and my parents. We contributed to the wedding, which was a paltry sum. Because we didn't believe in spending, although we had a big wedding, because it was my father's first daughter getting married. I was second but first in his line, so we wanted to invite a lot of people. But my husband and me did not want to, even as young 21 and 25-year-olds, we didn't believe in wasteful expenditure. So we said, let's just limit it to what is needed. And so it was not about, creating impression from the beginning. I kept telling that to my husband all along. I've had this mindset from day one. What I do for myself. And I don't do it for others. Now, if people notice, good. If people more than notice, if they learn from it, if I'm invited to gatherings like these, and I feel privileged to come and share my experience. So if something can be taken away from what I learned in my life, I think that's a big one, because these were learnings that I had in my life. And I'm always happy to go to seminars and hear other people speak. I always watch movies, autobiographies of people, because I learn how they live their life. And I take what I can from them. So this was my journey. So it was not an easy journey. I had a lot of joint families who will have a lot of people opposing me. and rubbishing your thoughts and ideas. Stay on track. Don't get disillusioned or discouraged. You must. Are you married?
Yeah.
Yeah. You must. Your husband should be your partner. He should be your friend first. Speak to him. Confide in him as a partner, as a friend in a logical way. Speak to. As my mother-in-law is an uneducated woman. Unfortunately, she didn't have the means in her time. She was married very early at the age of 16. She loved me as a mother-in-law and she continues to. But she really couldn't add value in terms of any learning to my life. But even in her limited way, of course, since she was in a position of authority when I got married, I kind of appealed to her. I spoke to her as a daughter-in-law who was ambitious, who wanted to work. I never made her feel less important because she was not educated. But I communicated to her in simple language, in Hindi. My Hindi is not bad, not that I can speak the way I'm speaking. And I would communicate to her and tell her how important it was for us to do what we were doing, to support me. And even my father-in-law, I would not, if I sensed that there was something that was not right, I would find a way of communicating to him too and not staying quiet. And yet I had opposition in the family because there are some people in joint families, no matter what you do, they will just not see it your way. And maybe, life is again about perspective. Maybe from their side, they are justified. I don't think it's right to believe that you are right always. So sometimes it's nice to have an opposing force, because the opposing force makes you reflect that, am I really going the right way? Oh yes, he's reminded me of something which is a weak link. Let me strengthen that link. So I always look at it that way. So constructive criticism is a good thing. When you complete a task, that's the first thing I ask people. When they came to my store, they came to my tea decor, wherever they came to, wherever I have an event, I say, listen, please don't tell me what you like because I know what's good. Tell me what you don't like, what I can't see. Don't tell me what you don't. And
So this is asking you because I know that we have some
time constraints.
Yeah.
Yes.
We would like somebody else to ask a question. Yeah, please do.
We hear a lot about work-life balance.
Yeah.
Do you really think this it's a truth? Does it really exist? And in case even if it does, and we all try to apply it, because this term is so famous and we just so all argue about it, but there's still a little bit of guilt or regret that we've not been able to be somewhere while we are somewhere else. So how do we?
Are you a mother?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so you're going to start feeling a lot of that once you become a mother. Like you want to
got
okay.
married.
So work-life balance to me is essential. We all know the benefits of yoga, right? And yoga is the mind and the body. It's a combination of exercising both. And why work-life is important is health, balance. When I say balance, when you spend a little time not working and interacting with people, you kind of relax. It's important to even relax, recharge, rejuvenate. You can't just go on a relentless pursuit of chasing one's goals. Because, coming from me, I've relentlessly pursued my goals. But I ensure that along the way, if I don't balance, then finally I will break. I will exhaust myself. And that I will end up not being productive for my work because my energy, I will zap the energy out of me. I won't be a happy person. I will always be, so you need to keep yourself happy doing what you're doing. So you need to keep an hour a day in your life for yourself, whatever it is you like to do. If you want to exercise, you want to meditate, you want to spend time with your children, or you want to spend time with somebody you enjoy being with, an hour which gives you a lot of energy and a lot of peace, mental peace. And that in turn is going to become very productive for you in your work because you're going to perform better. So like they say, a little bit of a holiday. So balance, work-life balance, not just, I know sometimes people can rebuttal this by saying you can't be the best, you can't be the champion if you are not just looking at one thing and relentlessly pursuing pursuing it, and everything else doesn't matter. You see, that changes as you go along. Now, if you have something important coming up, you have a deadline that you're chasing, then you're prioritizing that task. So, during that finite period, you're prioritizing that task and you are working relentlessly towards achieving that goal and that deadline. But then soon after you achieve it, you need that break time to get back to relaxing yourself, healing yourself, rejuvenating yourself. So you can even work it that way. It doesn't mean in one day I've got to do all the 10 tasks. I can do, because the day has, unless you have expert time management skills, trust me, I'm a master in that as far as I'm concerned. I try to do everything in that one day. And then some days I don't manage to exercise, I don't manage to spend time with my children. Now of course my children are 26, 25, now they've grown up, but when they were younger I felt guilty about that. Then I say, okay, now break, now only for my children for some time and then get back. So you've got to shift, they're like platelets, you kind of shift focus as you move along. But to me, you will burn out if you don't have a work-life balance. So it's essential for mental and physical and performance. It's for ultimate performance, optimum performance.
So if
balance.
I'm understanding it correctly, so what you're saying, if some days you're not able to give to your children or to your work or to your health, you can compensate it by, you do it on the other days that you cannot. So it need not be constantly.
Exactly.
Like, even being constantly with children is also exhausting.
Exactly.
Ask me as a mother.
Yes,
Some days they're like, okay, please go. So that
Even children need a break.
Even children,
From you.
100%. They're most happy if the mother is not around.
You can't keep instructing them all the time.
Yeah, because the moment you see them, there's a mode, at least in me, there's a mode that.
Sense of identity, no? They must also sometimes just
Totally.
figure themselves out.
Exactly, and they learn to be more independent when
Yeah.
you're not hand-holding them. That was one of the key things with my children. I started at a very early age. I always spoke logically to them and asked them to choose rather than me telling them, because it kind of gives them a feeling of, we can decide for ourselves.
Give them a sense of independence.
Very important.
Any other questions? Yeah, Meg. She's a young girl who's getting married in the next 1 month.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Hearing about your journey and listening to everything that you said, you're a woman in business, you've built your empire, you've built your brands, your stores. When I compare that to any, all our fathers are working, I've seen my father work, I saw my mother work, and there is a clear difference, especially to the women who are sitting here today. We come from family business backgrounds, and when you're in family business as a working woman, it's a very different trajectory to someone who is in a corporate setup, and that is not something that most of the women here, I think, are working in a family setup. So that difference between a man's world and a woman's world in that sense, and a working woman, and what that entails, because the two can never be the same. As you just said about family balance, a woman is constantly has to think about family, has to think about kids, home, work, everything. And there is a lot of guilt that comes in, that I knew when my mother was working, I used to come back from school at around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and she knew that she had to be home by then. And the same thing if my father ever thought would be so strange, right? That how can a man expect her to be home at that time? So what is your take on that? And as right now, the young girls sitting here, we don't have kids, we're sort of starting out in business, but we're going to have to deal with this as time goes on.
So, what's your name again, sorry?
Mehak.
Mehak. So Mehak, honestly, I think you missed that at the beginning where I started this line, and I'm going to repeat it, where I said, for me, being a woman is a privilege, and I think we're in the superior position here. I'll tell you why. Because along with work, which we can equally do as much as a man and do it as well, we have the added responsibility of being mothers. Of course, our husbands are also parents, they are fathers, but being a mother is a different level. Children come out through us, and that bond, nobody can substitute that bond. Now when you get married to joint families, there's an adjustment. The husband is not in a new family, he's in his own family. The husband is expected to go out there and work, and if you choose to work, it's your ambition, it's your dream. You you've got to manage both without neglecting your domestic responsibilities and your social responsibilities. Because we live in a country with a lot of cultural responsibilities. There are festivals, we need to participate in them, we need to, I did all of that, all the pujas, whether it was Diwali, whether it was Karwa Chauth, whether all of them, I did all of that. But now it's about how much of that you do and how much of time you put into that. You can still do all of that, but limit yourself to a certain time doing that, so that your presence was there, you participated, but not excessively. The minute you tip the balance and go too much into that, something that you can finish, if your husband is attending a Diwali puja for an hour, you don't need to attend it for 2 hours. You can attend it with him for 1 hour. Your presence was there. So this is where you need to decide that, and decide for yourself and fall through with it, that I have added responsibilities. My child expects me to put him to sleep, for example, at night, whatever. So something which maybe my husband is not expected and I as a mother want to do, and that's what my child yearns for. So that much more of your time is going. So the way you should feel about it, I'll tell you about mindset. That's where I said, life is about your attitude. Your mindset in your life should be, I'm having to do so much more than my husband or the man in my life. Which means if I can do all of that and I do it intelligently with good time management skills, I'm in a superior position here. Because I am the woman. And the woman is, so this is the way you look at it. You don't look at it as a handicap. You look at it as an advantage, because now you have all the cards. There are few cards he's not holding, you're holding those. You are even building a bond with your children. So don't do anything excessively. So if it's about spending time, with your children in a particular sport or activity, go there, make your presence. If there is an open house where you have to attend together with your husband, go with your husband. It should not be expected that only you go. Having said that, when my children were growing up, my boys of course we both went together. When my daughter was very young, and I was so much into building the store and all of that, my husband ended up going more than I went to open house. You see? So even at home, you have your staff. So sometimes you can have whatever number of staff. You're not, if you are having a working day, you're not expected to go and serve in the kitchen as well, because you have also worked as much as your husband. So you need to have some trained person to do it. Or if you can, out of your choice, you feel happy serving your family, by all means do that. But it should not be, a requirement. You should not create that kind of, atmosphere where it is required that after working an entire day, you're expected to go and, make food and serve the family and then clean up after the family. Because it's how you place yourself. So from the beginning, you've got to kind of create that kind of atmosphere in your home where, everybody is aware that you are stretched out because you're doing so many things, and you also need time to yourself. And your man in your life, or your husband, your partner, will respect you if he sees that this woman is sincerely fulfilling all these responsibilities and she is doing her duties towards the in-laws, towards the children, towards her work, towards the home and the hearth. Now if he's one of those overly male chauvinistic kind of people who say, it's not enough, you have to do more of that and less of this, don't allow that to be dictated to you. Because if you are an educated woman, you have come from an educated family, and that is your power, it doesn't have to do with finances. You may have married into a well-to-do family, coming from a family which is not as well-to-do. Don't allow, because education is your power. That is your key thing. You must believe in that. And sometimes people can even get self-educated. If you didn't have it at a young age, even today, the internet is an ocean of knowledge. Read in any language that you want. Understand, the minute you start speaking sense, people will respect you.
I think, Simone, what I would also, if I could reflect on what Meg said, was that it's also accepting that sometimes we ourselves are not able to accept that my role need not be defined by outside. My role can be defined by myself, and when I define it, it's not easy, because your role of definition of self versus what you are expecting, there is going to be a mismatch, and you have to live with that mismatch. It takes time for the others to understand that this is what I want as a person, this is what I'm expected of, because I'm a mother or I'm a daughter-in-law, especially when you come into a, when you get married. Even sometimes even if let's say you're not married, this is expected out of you. It is difficult. First of all, you understand that it is not going to be easy. It is difficult because you are dealing with a difference of opinion, and as Simone said, it is coming from difference of opinion from an authority, people who you respect, who you love. So that is a challenge itself. But I think if you do it with, I think a lot of what I hear from you is grace. If you do it with grace,
Very important.
yeah. If you do it with grace and
sincerity.
Grace, sincerity, love, affection.
You don't need to shout. You
Yeah.
need to speak.
It takes time, but I think somewhere along the line it does come.
Another thing, when you spoke about expectations, there is a limit to how much you can fulfill expectations. Don't be a people pleaser. You will be unhappy. You need to be happy to make people happy around you. If you are fulfilled from within, I don't mean being fulfilled and happy doing inane tasks, excessive, indulging in excesses and for too much, or hoarding or things. I mean, you're doing your bit to the best of your ability. You know it. Now, somewhere in your family or your close circle or in the world around you, in your space, people are not happy with your performance and they are judging you and they are actually saying you should do it this way and that way. You don't need to please anyone. You don't even need to please your own children. That's the first thing you need to ask yourself. I have 3 children. I've never lived to please my children. I do what I can to the best of my ability in a graceful way, but keeping in mind I don't excessively do one thing because then something else will suffer. And then who likes it? Great. Who doesn't like it? Too bad.
Then you have to just
Too
reach
bad.
there. That too bad position.
That too bad person very soon will start respecting you when he sees success. He will say, this girl, she got it right because whatever she did, she got it right. So if you're going to keep worrying about that person, you'll never be able to get to where you want to be. You won't feel happy from within.
My father always tells me it's okay to say no.
Totally. Yeah.
Which maybe I think the way we've been brought up, we don't say that no very easily. But my dad always tells me, remember, the world is crazy. It's okay to say no. Yeah.
It's the way you say it.
Yeah, it's the way you handle relations and do it nicely.
The best way is place the argument in a logical way in front of your opponent, whoever that person is, and say, you choose which is better.
And sometimes if you're choosing it, you'll be happy. Then you're okay with the decision because it's your choice.
You'll be surprised that person sometimes will go with what you want. And if he doesn't, you will say, can you tell me why you think this way? Then he will think there's a nice healthy debate.
And it takes
Because it's a
time.
different perspective. I've always done that. It works like magic. I put it into the other person's lap, where I say logically, and I say, now, how would you play it? And this person starts thinking, rather than sometimes people don't want to keep listening to you giving instructions. So fair enough, you tell me which is the better way. You know which is the better way, but you're asking that person to decide. And the person says, I've got to make the right choice. So now let me say the right thing, and you'll be surprised he'll be saying what you say.
So we'll open for another question, maybe last one, somebody, yeah.
So Simone, basically I'm a jewelry designer and my sister Ashna and I, we are doing this together. We have like our homegrown brand, which hopefully we want to have our own like boutique or space soon. So you did say, thank you.
They're very good jewelry designers.
Thank you. So you said something about delegation and something about like learning to trust people. So like right now we both are in that phase where like we know like for further growth we can't do everything. Like it's just a team of 2 and we're getting by God's grace more work on our plate than we thought we would.
Yeah.
And so to grow we need more people, like our team should increase. And the kind of family like I came from, like I grew up in a family where education was given a lot of emphasis, being ambitious, being a perfectionist, doing everything with perfection was given a lot of emphasis. And I got married into a family where relationships are given so much emphasis. So I've got the best of both worlds, like being ambitious, supportive parents on both sides, and also at the same time relationships, values are of so much importance. So as a person, I'm trying to balance both. And so for that, we realize now to grow, we need to start trusting more people, getting them on board. So I wanted to understand, like, what was your journey? I'm sure you said, like you started small, and then how you brick by brick, you and your husband, you built this whole thing. So when you all got a team on board, like, what was your journey? Like, how did you select like people, and how do you kind of delegate work? And
So of course we have an HR team which kind of first interviews a set of people who they feel are competent, who have the qualities that we're looking for, education qualifications for that job. So first we need to naturally look at competent people who have some kind of a learning or background, depending on what task you want to assign them to. Then naturally you will have to personally interview, at least I did that initially, the important jobs. Meet with those people to see what they are all about in terms of their family. It's important where they are located, because how easy it is for them to reach your store, all of that, wherever your establishment is. You naturally need to look at qualities that go without being said. Honesty is very important, sincerity, somebody who has a more disciplined approach, look towards life, not somebody very laid back, complacent, casual. So it's very important to have that, somebody who has integrity, like I say, and someone who has initiative also, who comes up with some ideas, not is just do as directed, because do as directed you can get a lot of people. So try to get people who contribute, who participate, who are willing to work as a team. I always tell my people at Simone that individually we are like that, but together we are like that. The fist is stronger than the hand, like that. So we need to work collaboratively. Any business, when you work collaboratively, I tell my husband this all the time from day one, we are building a chain, a circle. We have to make sure every link of the chain is strong. We can't allow the circle to become oblong, that one side of the circle is stretching out because there is too much of power on that end and less on the other. So the circle has to grow bigger, with every link in that circle growing equally strong. So all the various departments that we are investing in, that we have created, from the design department, from the marketing, the branding, the retail division, the manufacturing division, and within the manufacturing so many more. The store also has so many different divisions, purchase, the sales team, etc. Every member of each of those departments, one need to be, education has to be there, so they have to be qualified for that job. Two is they must have a sense of discipline about themselves, that they are serious about their work. That you will get in the interview when you speak to them. About even job consistency, how long they have worked in a previous job. If there's somebody who's just going to flit from one job to the other 6 months, then they're just trying to get a better salary and move from one job to the other. Speak about, of course, honesty is very, very important. Sometimes, a person whose regularity, attendance is another big one. Sometimes you may have someone who is very intelligent, but the person's regularity at work is not good, or the attitude is not right. Attitude is another very big thing. The person is very callous or not respectful, or is not a team worker. Team worker is very important. You can't have somebody working for himself, just trying to get points with the boss. You have to be able to get somebody who works as a team, because these things are also very important. So these are all, attributes, these traits will lend to your company. Eventually you have to start making everybody in your company feel for the company. Not feel they are working so that they get their end paycheck. It's they're working for this company which they believe in, which they feel is theirs. It's our company. I never tell my staff, my store. Even in my text messages when I talk, I say our store. I always say our store. It's never my store. It's a privilege for me to have this. God willing, the space will move on to wherever and whatever it is to be when I pass. While I'm here, I have the privilege to work with my work family. We are working so many hours together. So we have to do something that is special, which is appreciated, which makes good business sense at the end of the day. but working in a space that is a happy space that we all learn from, grow with, grow together. So, and when we sit, I don't sit at the head of a table. I sit on a table where everybody has a voice. I encourage people to speak in my team. I've said this to my husband as well. It's very, very important he does that. I don't know how much of that he does. He is a little bit different in my thinking in this respect. He believes more in authority and delegating the work. I believe more in sitting around and actually contributing, because even sometimes when you least expect it and you underestimate, a certain employee can come up with something which you've not thought of. So always be humble in your work. Whatever you do and wherever you reach, humility is a big thing. You know, don't get pompous about your achievement. It's not going to get you anything in life. You know, and today the way the world is going more so, but from the beginning, be humble, be ready to learn, and be ready to say, I made a mistake. So let's try it again.
So do we have, sorry Suma, do we have any other questions? Maybe just wrapping it up.
I think it's spoken quite a lot. I said I could speak all day. You know. I hope I didn't bore you with so much of, philosophical talk.
No, it's, I'm sure because it's nice, especially we normally have, it's really nice to have the younger generation today, and to hear their ambitions. You know, it's
very good to hear that.
Very good. I mean, it's so nice to hear their ambitions also, because it also empowers you to accept your ambition and take it forward. And I'll ask Sonal Bhabhi to actually just give a vote of thanks and give a certificate of appreciation.
Yeah,
Oh my God.